Well, joining us now is the Honorary President of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Good to see you this morning, Nigel. You are a friend and an ally of Donald Trump. What's your reaction to this verdict?
I think the whole thing's a disgrace. It has been from start to finish. I have been concerned about the American judicial system for many, many years. You see, it's politicised in a way that ours isn't. You know, judges get elected on a ticket saying, I'm going to get Donald Trump. So you have to doubt the impartiality of the process from the very beginning. The point Trump made there in the video you showed is that the district in which this was held, you know, he got no more than 10% of the vote. So, you know, the likelihood is that the jurors would all be Democrats, or certainly not Trumpites. And even American juries seem to think along political lines. I personally think that the Biden administration, the US judicial system, have massively overplayed their hand. It was interesting that within half an hour of the verdict, Trump's donation website crashed. You know, I mean, huge numbers of people were going on to give money to his campaign. And the real key thing here is what happens to those in the middle. People love Trump, they'll say it's a disgrace. People hate Trump, they'll say, oh, at least our system works. What happens to those people in the middle? And my guess is that fair-minded Americans will think this is not showing their country in a very good light. And my sense is, ironically, this is probably the biggest electoral boost he could ever have had.
It's interesting because a lot of experts stateside are disagreeing with you this morning, Nigel, and they're saying, actually, for those swing voters in swing states, what this is likely to do is put them off. Because whatever the rights and wrongs of it all, they don't like the idea of someone with a criminal conviction being president of their country.
Yeah, but I mean, these are the same experts that said it was a 98% certainty that Hillary Clinton would win in 2016. Look, I don't know whether I'm right. They don't know whether they're right. You know, my guess is that fair-minded Americans will think this shines a very bad light on their country. That is my guess.
We've just heard from Donald Trump there vowing to fight on. How do you think he is really behind closed doors? Have you spoken with him since the verdict?
No, of course not, but I have sent a message of support. He is the most resilient human being I've ever come across. It seems the more and more they throw at him, and remember we had the Russia hoax that went on for 3 years, complete lie. We had the attempt to impeach him over Ukraine twice, total nonsense, and on it goes. And you can be in no doubt that the liberal left in America, much of the establishment, just want this man out of the picture at all costs. They don't care what they have to do. And he just comes through it all with a strength that is truly astonishing. As I say, I think that the liberal left have overplayed their hand here, and I think Trump, I feel more certain this morning that Trump will be the 47th president than I did yesterday.
Can I take you back to what you said slightly earlier, Nigel? Because you would... obviously, the judicial system in the States is very different to ours, and as you say, people get elected on a ticket and all the rest of it, which, I mean, certainly over here we find a little bit disturbing, don't we? But he was nevertheless convicted on evidence presented to a jury of his peers. Now, if you can go about in the United States and say, well, actually, juries are entirely political, and you end up impugning juries in all of this, well, that actually throws the whole judicial system in the States into absolute chaos.
The whole thing needs scrapping and starting again. Stephen, let me give you a separate example of this, but one that I've seen friends of mine involved with. Say you're charged with something, a financial crime, whatever it may be. Regardless whether you've done it or not, you're told, now look, if you plead not guilty and go to court, your legal fees will be $3 million and you'll get 88 years in jail. Or you can plead guilty, there'll be a fine of $5,000 and you'll serve 2 weeks. And people take, so 98% of cases where there are charges result in guilty pleas. That is how totally corrupted the American judicial system is at every level. And if your judges are politicized, don't be surprised that your juries are politicized too. I tell you what, we may criticize some aspects of our judicial system, but it's a damn sight better than America, Europe, and most of the rest of the world.
If it's so terrible for, and I'm not trying to defend it in any sense, But if there was this conspiracy from the Biden campaign to skewer Donald Trump through the judicial system in this way, doesn't it also raise into question his last campaign back in 2016 when basically he spent the whole time saying lock her up about Hillary Clinton? I mean, it's that whole what's good for the goose is good for the gander, isn't it?
Well, I think some of the Clinton's financial affairs have been interesting, to say the least. And, of course, perhaps the biggest conspiracy was the Hunter Biden laptop, showing all sorts of linkages between a man of extremely dubious character and President Biden and companies in Ukraine. And yet, what happened with that is that Facebook, Twitter and social media refused to let the American public know. So, look, we can point fingers. We can try to apportion blame on both sides. The fact is that he was in trial for accountancy. Do you think Donald Trump does accounts? Do you think Donald Trump even examines the fine detail of these accounts? Of course he doesn't. He leaves it all to professionals. And the key witness, Michael Cohen, his ex-lawyer, admitted under oath to being a liar and a thief. And it's on the basis of his evidence that this conviction has taken place. It would never have happened in our country.
You go.
Oh, all right. I get another go, Nigel. I wanted to ask you actually about something over here, because obviously we're focusing on US politics a lot with that this morning. But over here, I was struck by the Telegraph this morning, Nigel, where they've got a little piece on page 7, effectively saying you've fallen out with Richard Tice, that he's slapped you down over comments you made about the Tory party. Yeah.
OK, great. I mean, journalists earn salaries. They have to write something, don't they? Load of cobblers.
Well, I'll ask you something else then, Nigel. Do you stand by your decision, in light of this verdict, to help Trump with his election campaign in the US, to focus on the US election rather than stand as a candidate yourself here in the UK election? Because lots of your fans were very disappointed by that decision.
Well, they're two separate things, aren't they? Because the US election will come after this general election campaign. 4th of July, our election's over. Keir Starmer's in number 10. And we then got the long run-in to November the 5th in America. Yes, of course I'm going to stand up and defend Donald Trump. And I'll tell you why. Because I believe the world, uncertain as it is, will be a much safer place with him in the White House with Joe Biden. And I think his record as 4 years as president, just think about those Abraham. Context of what's happening today, getting Arab states and Israel to sign peace and trade accords. So, yeah, I'll be helping him.
OK, just a final point. Do you have any regrets? I mean, I know we're only like on day 8 or whatever of this election campaign, but do you have any regrets now? Now you've seen the reaction to you not standing. Do you have regrets that you've made that decision?
Huge regrets. Absolutely huge regrets. I was going to launch yesterday a 6-month campaign to fight a constituency and to, campaign all over the country. And with 6 months at this, I think Reform could have done astonishingly well. In 6 weeks, starting from scratch, when you're me, when you know they'll cheat against me as they did last time. And by the way, I'm not making that up, because one of the agents got a 9-month suspended prison sentence for breaking the law in the Conservative campaign against me. In those circumstances, I thought I could do much better for the party and the cause by touring the country. I'll be in Ashfield tomorrow with Lee. I'm going to be up with Richard Tice today in Boston and Skegness. I couldn't have done those things and fought a seat from scratch against an establishment that here will do not quite the same as Trump, but will do almost anything to stop me.
OK, Nigel, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much for your time.
And it's worth pointing out that in those constituencies Nigel mentioned, of course, plenty of other people standing, and we will list those on the website for you, gbnews.com.
Yeah, gbnews.com/yoursay. Keep your views coming in on that interview with Nigel, or indeed any of the stories that we're talking about today.